Good evening, and thank you for tuning into this video. So tonight, I just wanted to do a few review problems to help you prepare for the test on Thursday. So these are just problems we have been working in class. So the first example, we're working a compound inequality separated by and. So go ahead and out to the side put and. So that's the type of compound inequality it is. So again, we actually have two inequalities here. If I cover it up, we have negative 2/3 is less than 4x plus 1. And our other inequality is 4x plus 1 is less than 5. So those are two inequalities. Now to solve this, what we first have to do is we have to get the x by itself. So I'm going to subtract 1 first. So I'm going to subtract 1 to each of the three expressions. Okay? So I have negative 2/3 minus 1. Well, negative 2/3 minus 1 is just going to be negative 5 over 3. You could do that by, you can change the 1 to 3 over 3. So your fraction is going to be negative 2/3 minus 3 over 3. And that's how I got my 5/3 right here. I just made the 1 a fraction and then found my common denominator. So negative 5/3 is less than or equal to 4x, which is less than 5 minus 1 is 4, so which is less than 4. So that's what I have so far. Now, I have to divide, in order to get the x by itself, I have to divide each of these three expressions by 4. Now notice, I have a fraction right here. A common question you guys asked me today was, well, what do I do when I have negative 5/3? How do I divide that by 4? The easiest way to think about this is, whenever I have a fraction, I'm trying to divide by another fraction, think multiply by the reciprocal. So dividing everything by 4 is just the same as multiplying everything by the reciprocal, which is 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and just multiply everything by 1/4. Multiply this by 1/4, then multiply this by 1/4. Okay? When I multiply 1/4 times negative 5 over 3, I get negative 5/12. So I get negative 5/12 is less than or equal to 4x times 1/4 is just x. And then 4 times 1 over 4 is just 1. So my solution is x is greater than or equal to negative 5/12, but less than 1. Okay, so that's my answer. So remember, when you have an inequality with an and in it, when you're graphing this, you're shading in one interval. So I'm going to graph it out to the side. Here is my number line. I have my 0 right here, I have my 1 right here, and I have negative 5/12 right here. Okay, if you look at this part, we know that x is greater than or equal to negative 5/12. Because of the greater than or equal than sign, I have to shade, it's going to be a closed circle for my negative 5/12. Now I have x, I also have, my other part of my solution is that x is less than 1. Now there's no equal sign underneath it, so it's going to be an open circle. So x is going to be between negative 5/12 and 1. So I'm going to shade on the inside. So notice with this, I only have one interval for my solutions. All right, so that's number 1. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 is different. We have a compound inequality connected by the word or. We have 5z minus 3 is greater than 7, or 4z minus 6 is less than negative 10. So with these, again, we have two inequalities. So you're going to have to solve each inequality separately. And then when you graph the solution on the number line, the solutions are going to go away from each other. So you're going to have two intervals for the graph. So let's go ahead and work this out. So to get z by itself here, I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And then I get 5z is greater than 10. To get z by itself, divide by 5. So I have z is greater than 2. That's one part of my solution. Now with this, I'm going to have to solve both of these inequalities before I can come up with the final solution. So on the other side, we have 4z minus 6 is less than negative 10. First thing I got to do is add 6 to both sides. When I add 6 to both sides, I get 4z is less than negative 4. Okay? Divide both sides by 4. And then I'm going to have z is less than negative 1. So my solution is going to be connected with or. My final solution is going to be z is greater than 2 or z is less than negative 1. So we actually have two intervals in which the solution can be found. This makes more sense once you graph it on a number line. All right, so to graph this, I have my 0 right here, my negative 1's right here, my 2's right here. So I have z is greater than 2. Since there's no equal sign, it's going to be open circle. And because it's greater than, I'm going to shade to the right. So I'm shading to the right, my arrow's going to the right. Then I have z is less than negative 1. Again, open circle, and I'm going to shade to the left. So notice that this graph looks different than this graph. Whenever we have a compound inequality and it's joined by the word and, when you graph it, you're only graphing one interval. However, with the second one, because the compound inequality is joined by the word or, you actually have two separate intervals in which your solution can be found. So your solution can be found in this interval, or your solution can be found on this interval. Okay? Let's go ahead now and work in absolute value one. All right, so I've already found a mistake on this. I'm sorry, I'll try to get more accurate notes, but this should be an equal sign. So change this to an equal sign. It should be, this is 3 times, I'm going to make this clear, so 3 times the absolute value of 5m minus 9 minus 3 is equal to 24. Again, please change it. That is a typo. Now with absolute value equations, as we talked about in class today, the very first thing you have to do is you have to isolate or get by itself the absolute value expression. So I'm trying to get this guy by itself right here. First thing I'm going to do is add 3 on both sides. When I add 3 on both sides, I'm going to have 3 times 5m minus 9 is equal to 27. Okay? Now to get the absolute value expression by itself, I have to divide both sides by 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I'm left with the absolute value of 5m minus 9 is equal to 9. Now, 5m minus 9 is a distance of 9 units away from 0. So you actually have two possibilities here. Since the absolute value of 5m minus 9 is equal to 9, that means that this part right here inside the absolute value brackets, this could be either equal to 9 or negative 9. So I have to set up two separate equations. So on one hand, I have 5m minus 9 is equal to 9. That's one equation. My other equation is 5m minus 9 is equal to negative 9. So again, because I have the absolute value bracket, that means I have two possibilities. Because both 9 and negative 9 are 9 units away from 0. So I have to set this expression equal to both 9 and negative 9. Now, let's look at this one first. To solve for this, I add 9 on both sides. Adding 9 on both sides, I have 5m is equal to 18. Solve for m, I can divide by 5. And I get m is equal to 18/5, which equals 3 3/5. Okay? So m on this, for this equation, m is equal to 3 3/5. All right, so same thing here. I'm going to add 9 on both sides to get my m by itself. And then now I have 5m is equal to 0. Divide both sides by 5. And I get m is equal to 0. So my two solutions are m is equal to 3 3/5, and my other solution is m is equal to 0. Now to graph it, I don't have to do any shading. So I have two solutions, so I'm just going to plot 2 points down. One solution is m is equal to 0, so that's 1 point. I'm just going to circle it in. My other solution is that m is equal to 3 3/5. Notice with this one, because it's not an inequality, I don't have to shade anything in. I just plot my 2 points. Okay. You have a couple of example problems I want you to do. I didn't write it on your sheet. So go ahead on the back of your paper. I want you to do these 2 example problems. For your first practice problem, I want you to solve this inequality. Okay, that's one practice problem. And your second practice problem is going to be an absolute value equation. So for your second practice problem, I want you to solve this equation. So absolute value of 1/2 y minus 3/4 minus 1/4 is equal to 7. All right, you can push pause if you need to. So those are the 2 example problems I will expect you to work in class for tomorrow. God bless you and have a good evening.